Welcome back to the Disrupt Education Podcast. I'm here with Peter Hostrasser. I'm Allie Privet, and we are mixing it up a little bit this week. I have a very different guest, but before we get to that, Peter, how are you doing?
I am doing great actually. Just, got over the old cold at the beginning, like when we're taping this, over the cold at the beginning of the school year where you get that quick sickness and then you're done and you're going to be fine the rest of the way. So, everything is to your point, and I'm gonna do sky things here, blue sky from here on out. Yeah.
Love it. So this this fall, we have gotten to talk a lot about disrupting education in people doing the work in like very different ways. And obviously, I've talked about my skydiving journey throughout the last couple years on the podcast here and there, but we haven't really taken disrupt education to the sky, so to speak. And so I was like thinking, how do we really round out this series and help our listeners kind of think about ways they themselves can kind of make changes in their own learning models. And having worked with our guest personally, known her for well over a year now, and she was my tandem instructor, evaluator, and is amazing. So welcome, Jen Sharp, to the
Hello.
podcast. How are
Hello.
you today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Always great to talk to you.
Yes, is you as well. So, um, for our listeners who don't know you, maybe give us like a little bit of your background and what you're kind of passionate about working on these days, and tell us whatever you want to share um, to start us off.
Okay, well, I can also tell on you then, right?
Sure.
So I
Yes.
just recently, Allie worked very hard to become a tandem instructor, and I'm a tandem examiner. And so I ran the course for her to earn her instructor rating. So tandem instructor rating, because she already had an instructor rating, but not for tandem. And that was quite fun. It was great. And I had already met you. You're quite driven. It's great. I love sharing that kind of thing. There's not a lot of female tandem instructors, actually, very even much fewer female tandem examiners. And so it's kind of a neat change from the normal crowd, I guess. So, but really, basically, why I wanted to be a tandem instructor and tandem examiner was because I ran my own drop zone in Kansas for a long time. And I did almost everything but that. So I just wanted to push myself, see if I could do it. And turns out I love it. I absolutely love it. Giving things to people. I think I'm addicted to helping other people succeed. It's like why I love teaching as well, and taking people on their first skydive and all that. So it's maybe I'm a parasite on people's excitement, I guess, because when you get down and you land and you're like, awesome, like, can you believe that just happened? I'm kind of saying that too. Yeah, it's amazing what you can do when you put your mind to something. I'm saying that about myself too. So it's just a renewing of excitement and everything. And I think that's a lot of why I love teaching as well. So
Yeah. I I'm so geeked about this conversation because when Allie was like, I have somebody, and we've always talked about her, Allie, your journey going from, the classroom basically in a plane and learning your whole learning journey there. Jen, I wanted to ask you, what was your path? Like, how did you get to a point to where you became a very, I mean, there's not, like you said, if there's not a lot of tandem female jumpers, who, are the examiners, like, can you kind of unpack that path of how you got into the air and then got to where you are today?
okay, sure. I was 16 when I saw my first skydive. It was a demo jump into a stadium at K-State, at Kansas State
Yeah.
University. I was in the crowd. My sister was in the band, and I saw them land, and I was like, "Whoa, that's amazing!" So, like when you see something for real in
Mhm.
life, not on video, just real people doing real things, uh, it probably didn't have the flair and all the excitement that you see on videos, but it's something amazing about just in-person experiences like that. And so I was 16, and of course you can't skydive until you're 18. So I kind of held that kernel in the back of my head, I guess. And turns out I did go to K-State. That's where I chose to go for lots of other things, but it just took me there. I'm 18 years old. You don't know what you're made of. I see this little bitty ad in the paper, classified ad. Like, I mean, I'm showing my age here. What's a paper? What's a classified ad? But anyway, see this little thing.
I'm with you.
And it was with the parachute club. And I'm like, I'm going to do that. I didn't tell my parents. I just used college loan money to go do that. And I got down for my first jump, and I was just like, I don't even know what happened. I just stuck around because I was flabbergasted by all of that. And somebody who probably wasn't even an instructor came up to me and said, how was that jump? And I was like, oh, it was amazing. Well, then they go, do you want to do it again? And I was like, oh, people do this more than once. I was 18 and much blonder than I am right now. So I was like, okay, well, I'll try that again. How much is it? And so I was 18, really new in college. And, I think this is like what is amazing about engaging in any kind of new thing is like especially at that age, you're trying to figure out, well, who am I? What am I made of? What am I capable of? And it is sort of this momentum. It's difficult to do things in a momentum first until you put more effort into it. And then it becomes a trajectory that you're on with a lot of force behind it. And 200 jumps later, yes, Allie 200, because that was what it used to be a pro rating. I was jumping into that same stadium that I saw my first jump in, carrying the game ball into K-State. And just, it was, that's why I love demo jumps to this day. It was just how impactful they can be. So I did, in school, I got a bachelor's in music education. I taught in public school for 3 years, and that was rough. Not because I didn't love the kids. I loved the kids, but public school is rough, and it is even harder now. I don't even know how teachers do it. But I went kind of towards my first track, which was programming. So I got a degree in that as well. And but I always loved music and teaching music. And so I kept my hand in it, and I volunteered at the school where my kids were and did private lessons, music lessons privately for all those years. So I was teaching anywhere from like 5-year-old to 80-year-old, 80-year-old saying, hey, I want to play the drums. Okay, well, let's try, so I had a huge variety of people, a lot of one-on-one, but also small groups, because I helped with the high school band and the middle school band and stuff. So, and then of course, teaching skydiving. And it's really interesting just seeing a whole variety of different people. And I definitely believe in differentiation about, just meeting people where they are. But it's amazing how common we all are. It's amazing how common every single person is. And it is a throwback to me and learning about myself, And that is that, here recently, I've for the last few years, when I start a skydiving course as an examiner with teaching skydivers to be instructors. So it's train the trainer kind of programs. And I'm just trying to get them to think about learning. And we do introductions, and I go, how do you learn best? And without exception, every single person I've asked that to, they say, oh, I learned by doing. And they think that they're unique in that. Well, I'm different. I learn by doing. Well, I learn by doing, though. Oh, I learn by doing. And so I go, okay, so if doing is learning, what's teaching? It's not talking, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You have to set up experiences for people to try and struggle and figure it out. Obviously, Sygotsky zonal proximal development right next to where they are, not too far away. Otherwise, they get a little not as encouraged. But yeah, I mean, if that was one thing I had that I would really love to change people's mind about, it would be that.
Yeah.
I believe we all have this innate thing we want to be able to. We want to teach.
Mm-hmm.
Every single person wants to teach, and everybody thinks they're good at it, but they're not. Not necessarily. Okay, there are good teachers, but I'm just saying that the average person who's not, hasn't been engaged in this, they think they're a good teacher. And so, how do you do that? And Allie, I'm sure that you can relate to this, is being an examiner in skydiving. We're taking people who don't have any kind of educational background or theory, and we have to turn them into teachers like quickly.
Yeah.
But I see this also everywhere. If you talk about adult education, you're talking about like people who train it in the corporate world, or people who, they have a good idea, they think, and so they want to try to spread that idea, and they're trying to teach about it. And I think that there's like this fundamental thing about teaching, that it's not natural to do a good job at that, because we always want to help somebody do it. But kind of like, well, yeah, people learn by doing. So shut up and let them do it, So I'm just lazy. Just try to be lazy.
Yeah, I mean, we were
you do it
20 minutes in the course, and she's like, here, you gear check this rig for me. And it's like, okay. Oh, well, we're just gonna go through the process. Haven't really done it before, but you're right. Like, in just talking through it, you figure out your gaps, and you could sit there and show me everything, but it's not gonna stick. But like, I need to be the one touching, doing. If I'm the one learning it, you already have the information. You've done it for a while. But it, even like when I reflect back as a teacher, sometimes I'd feel like, oh, I really do need to present this thing for the students to understand. And then in hindsight, I'm like, I probably could have gotten them to do it faster, sooner. And I know, like, in the 10 years I taught, there was way less of me talking and way more of the students doing, but I would like take that to another level now. I was back in a traditional classroom. But it's interesting, like, even in just like the 4, I've only been a tandem instructor for a couple weeks at the time of this recording, and the few tandems that I've done so far, it's like the students want to know, what do I need to do? Right? Yeah. Like, what do I need to do? And you literally need to make them do it. You can't just like be like, and talk and at them. I mean, some of it is in skydiving, helping them overcome their fear questions, but really they are the ones that are going to be doing it. So on the skydiving topic, okay, so because I like listeners, they do reach out, and they're like, asking me skydiving questions, and like, of course, me and you have heard the fear conversation, but I think this applies to education. It doesn't matter if it's like teaching skydiving or anything, but I think you have a unique perspective on fear and what it means when people say they're afraid of skydiving or heights or whatever, and like how that relates to learning. So I just want to open the door for you to kind of like, what are your thoughts about fear and learning and in relation to skydiving and on the ground?
Right. Well, you will see this as you take more people, but I'm sort of an armchair psychologist in fear, because I've strapped about 2,500 people to me, strangers, and we hurl ourselves out of an airplane together, so yeah. And people do actually generally act very similar to each other. It's interesting. And so I love saying, fear is really about the unknown, is really, if you boil everything down. I'm afraid of the dark. When your kids tell you that, I told my son, why are you afraid of the dark? The dark can't hurt you. It's the monsters in the dark. I'm just kidding. Actually, I did say that, but I was like, well, why, like, I'm afraid of heights. Are you really afraid of heights? Well, I'm afraid of widths. It makes just as much sense, doesn't it?
Right.
No, what we're really afraid of is dying. Aren't you? Like, if I'm going to skydive, I'm not afraid of heights. I'm afraid that I'm not going to make it. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Well, you're really afraid of the unknown. So what are the knowns? Well, the gear is known. The weather's known. We're only going to go to good weather. As Allie can attest to, the training to become a tandem instructor is quite rigorous, and you have to have a lot of experience just to even get to that level, to even engage in the training. The processes are all the same, the emergency procedures. So really the unknown is you. You might learn something about yourself. Right? So when we talk about fear, and people handle fear differently. Sometimes you are afraid of something that you shouldn't be afraid of. So, and then sometimes you are afraid because you should be afraid. So let's distinguish that first. And I love making analogies between skydiving and life, because I'm a pretty good skydiver, but sometimes in life I kind of suck at some things, you're like, yeah, I got to figure this out. How do I do this? What's this process? And so in skydiving, where we're teaching somebody to handle their body position and handle things that are going wrong, that, like, oh no, I'm going to handle being, let's say, unstable because I'm falling and I don't know how to necessarily do it. Well, what we do is we teach them basically three things: that you're going to arch with your hips, and that, that causes stability in the center of your body, and that you're going to relax so that you can handle, breathe in, relax your body so you can start moving, and that your arms and legs are symmetrical, you're neutral. So you're in a position where you can respond. So let's take that to life. Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is relax. Okay. Yeah. You know what? We often make things so much worse because we're so anxious. Just kind of calm down for a second. Like, is it really that bad? Let's take a perspective. Relax, breathe, center yourself, and focus on yourself here before you start acting. Arch. Okay. Well, arching is taking the most important body part, the most important contributor, and focusing on that and putting more emphasis on that. So instead of being distracted with all the things, let's talk about the most important thing that you can focus on and just look at that, put emphasis on that. And then neutral. Neutral is about being in a spot where you can move in any direction so that you're poised to be able to respond and poised to be able to react instead of overreacting or overamping. And you're starting out with your arms way out. You're starting out all amped. So I've used that a lot in my life of being able to just handle fear, handle crazy stuff, handle instability, handle things that happen. And when you have a process like that, I feel like then you can, they say overcome your fear, but you still may have that fear, and it may be part of it, but you're not letting it stop you from doing the thing that you want to do, from doing the next thing, but doing the thing you have to do. And you have a process for controlling as much as you can control and still staying, attuned to all the things. Like, we kind of like going to scary movies, don't we? Because we like being surprised, and we kind of like fear a little bit. We like the variety of stuff, as long as we can handle it. And I think that's why people go skydiving anyway, isn't it? Because they want to kind of see what it's like, and they are a little afraid, and they want to see what they can do. And yeah, I mean, that's why we engage in any kind of new thing, to just try to kind of experience it. So
you're bringing me back. So I don't know if Allie told you, I have one static line jump under my belt.
Very cool.
And it was in college, and that's you're bringing back memories, arch, and just some of the terms that you're using. It's funny though, because that was, and I will age myself, over 30 years ago, right? And I still remember, while you're speaking, I remember the instructor going through those terms, and that in its own right is proof of exactly what you're saying. So the one thing though that I also remember is when I was on the strut and we let go, everything was like fine. I told Allie, like, it was the lines were slightly twisted, and of course I'm freaking out a little bit, but then we get it, and I fly the kite, whatever it is, down, the chute down. And I'm totally like botching this. I'm like, but it was fun, and it was great. When the instructor got to the ground, he's like, great job. I mean, hit the landing zone. I can fly the canopy. That was easy for me for some reason. I'm an airplane geek, so like, I kind of had that in my head. But he immediately is like, I was like, so how did I do? And he's like, well, you didn't arch. Right. And I was like, we didn't have video back then, or it wasn't available in the kind of ways that we have it now. And he was like, you kind of balled up. And I'm like, really? And it was at the end of the day, the weather was turning. We couldn't not even everybody could go. So, but I really wanted to go and do it again, to like feel it right away. And all day long that I was thinking about, you talking about fear and the unknown. And, I felt that, but the next time it wasn't about that. It was about the fear of not doing it right or not improving. So
Mhm.
that's amazing. That's why I wanted to kind of ask you. So, with so many jumps, whether you're tandem or just, helping people in wherever they are in the process, do you see a lot of that? Like what goes on after that first jump that people talk to you about? I mean, as soon as the ether is gone, like what's the next step? What do you hear them say to say, "Hey, I want to do this again." What is that like?
Yeah, I mean, to your point about balling up, that's actually kind of common because we're exposing you to something that's very scary.
Yeah.
And our number one instinct is to protect ourselves, go
Yeah.
fetal. We're asking you to do the exact opposite,
Yeah.
completely open yourself up, show your neck, and all this other kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
physiologically, this is a very difficult thing.
Yeah.
And self-awareness is difficult as well. And if you think about, let's, extrapolate that and put that towards any new endeavor or learning. Yeah, I mean, there's a fear can be such a barrier to people opening themselves up, and they think
Hmm.
that, well, I'm just gonna, maybe test the waters a little bit. But if you don't actually just commit and do it, you probably, first of all, like you said, you're probably not doing it right. You're not experiencing it to the full extent. You're not going to keep progressing. So it's kind of interesting how, if we can trust that, right? Because you're trusting your instructor.
Hmm.
Especially have to trust a tandem instructor, but hey, you know what happens to you happens to them, so that's kind of cool. That's at least you're attached.
Right.
But yeah, so what makes people come back for another skydive? What makes people continue to engage in something new that's going to challenge them? Because if we do talk about education, and I mean, I'm not, your audience is not lost on me here with especially like high school and post-secondary and all that, because this is when people are trying to figure out who they are and they are trying to become adults. And if for us to have those kind of processes, we need to start transitioning that so that they are taking charge of their own learning, that they understand what it takes to learn. I remember when I was in college, I was selected to help teach at-risk freshmen study skills so that they could stay in college.
Hmm.
And we had to learn the material first, of course, before we were, being this a teacher in that group. And I was like, why did we not learn this? Why did not we learn this in high school? Why did not everybody learn this? And you know, I'm going off on tangent, sorry, but
No,
why
it's all
why
good.
do we not? Why do we not learn how we learn? And
Hmm.
why do we not learn how to teach?
Hmm.
Like this is as fundamental as balancing a checkbook. And I don't think it's any fundamental anymore. Actually, you can just have an app for that. So I guess we don't need that anymore. But yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty fundamental to
Yeah.
be introspective enough to be able to understand yourself and what drives you forward. I mean, and although different things motivate different people, it does come from a place of motivation. And if you look at little kids, this is part of what my dissertation was on was andragogy versus pedagogy. And at some point, we have to make that transition. Where do we make that transition? So pedagogy is the philosophy of teaching kids, which is
Hmm.
like, well, they can't immediately apply what they learn. There really is no place for them to immediately apply some of these skills we're trying to teach them. Maybe they can practice it for a while, but it's not like they're going to go out and get a job and, have to figure out what we're teaching them.
Hmm.
You have to kind of contrive those meaningful applications in the classroom for them. It's just because they're not ready yet, because they're just kids. At some point, they're going to transition. Okay. And they're usually transitioning mostly in high school to being more adults. And this is why I think a lot of kids lose the motivation to continue, is because maybe they're actually, we think they're behind a little bit. Maybe they're ahead because they want it to be meaningful. They want it to make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why we're doing this. I don't want to do it because it doesn't apply to me right now. Adults need that though. And if you look at adult training, especially, and the things that we actually go ahead and assume and cater to, it's like, okay, we're going to be doing in this training class, and then we expect them to immediately apply it. We defocus on test scores and talk about transferring what they learned to the real world. Well, one of the most best predictors of transfer is motivation to transfer. There's a lot of other predictors, but that's a high one. Motivation to transfer. And, I did some background in the literature about transfer, and it's crazy. You know how much money we spend on training and then how little we actually use it? It's ridiculous. Like there was like this study where they literally had zero of the attendees apply what they learned about how to help people who just got bit by a snake. 1 hour after they got done training, they could not apply what they learned. Zero people in that course could do it.
Wow.
Could do it. Apply what they learned, and transfer what they learned to the real world. Okay, so fine, I got a good score on the test, but what does that mean? Or but in general, like the stats are more about 1/3 of adults who undergo training a year later, they remember 40% or less of what they learned. So why do we do all this if we're not going to continue with it? We're not going to apply it. Yeah, what's going to motivate people to keep going with it? Well, definitely it has to make sense for your situation. So if we're talking about the training, well, let's make it as realistic to where people are going to use it. And Allie, I hope that you could see that in your course as well. You said something about like, hey, I just made you just start and go, hey, do a gear check. Well, that's because you have to do it every single time. That's part of your job. And did you know how to do a gear check? Yeah. On this gear, no, but it was kind of close. And then we talk about the differences. It's like start with what they know, see what they know. I love starting everything with who's my student? What do they know? Because that's going to be the differentiation. Point A to point B. Okay, I don't know where point A is yet. And you have a classroom of people. We had 3 people in that class. All 3 were a different spot. But I know what point B is. I know where I want them to be, because that's going to be how they do it in the real world when I walk away. And it's kind of fun. Point A to point B, that's my job as a teacher, is to get somebody from point A to point B. And you can do it in a whole bunch of different ways. And you start trying and, got to reroute because that's not working. Those are things that are fun. But I think if those fundamentals are super clear at the beginning, then you're going to get people to want to come back. They see the point. It's meaningful to them. And we're going to get what we want out of training, which is you can actually transfer it to the real world. I feel like that's a very big thing as well. Like not only just having people do, but making it meaningful so that when they get out of that training, they're actually going to use it.
So I feel like one of the main differences in school versus like, when you're learning as an adult is that you in school, maybe, you register for these classes because you have to, because it's a requirement for graduation, not because you like the subject or want to understand it at a deeper level, English literature or history or math or, in whatever the subject is, you had graduation requirements. And even in college, like, yes, you get more, choice because you might go a certain way with your major. But for me, with skydiving, like, I wanted you to come teach me. Like, I sought you out. I was very invested in the learning because it was to move my goals forward. It was the training I wanted, needed. And like everything was driven by like a high motivation factor.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what is a way, in the traditional school model that we can kind of bring that? Like, what would you say is a way to, like, how do we backtrack that? Like, yes, it's easier in your adult life, but, like, what would you say would be tools that teachers and students and even school leaders should be thinking about to, like, make education, like, more motivating?
Yes. I have a model for that as well in my head. And it actually dovetails really nice between pedagogy and andragogy, which is, kid learning versus adult learning. And that is, kids really love to play because it's fun. And we often don't remember that when we're transitioning into the adult world, because, you got to be an adult, and adulting. And that's like a verb now or something that means not fun. And I'm just going, wait a minute. Like, can we do this differently? And so there's this interesting 3-part cycle to success that you can intercept at any point, in my opinion. And I'm taking this based off of what I saw teaching in band, music, drums, basically that kind of thing. And because, you get some people, maybe it's not fun for them, but there's three components: fun, time, and good. And it's a cycle, and you can intercept it at any point. So let's say you find it fun. Well, if you find it fun, you're probably going to spend more time at it. And anytime you spend more time at something, you're going to get better at it. You're going to be good. Okay, that works. Well, let's start at the good. Let's say if you're good at something, you're good at math. Okay, well, if you're good at something, then it's kind of fun because, you're kind of unique, that I'm really good at this. And then you spend more time at it and you get better. So it's this cycle that keeps going. Okay, well, what people forget also is there's the time. You can intercept it on the time. Okay, it's not fun and you're not good at it. Well, you spend more time at it. Well, you get better. And then when you're good, it's really fun to be good. So, it's good to have fun, but it's more fun to be good. So there's this cycle that you can intercept at any point that at any point when I felt like, okay, this is not working in one direction, this is an overall cycle that you can keep encouraging people to go. But I would never rule out the fact that it is supposed to be fun. It is supposed to be fun. And maybe the moment is not fun. Okay, well, how else can you increase that motivation so that you spend the time on it, so that but you're good at it? Okay, well, let's spend more time on it. Isn't that fun to be good? Yeah. Okay. Just try to get that going. And, like when I start my courses and teaching people to be instructors, skydiving instructors, I'm always like, well, what do you expect out of this course? And we always start like that. And it's kind of funny to me because a lot of times people forget that they expect that they want the rating. They want to get a rating so they can use it. They kind of forget that part. But actually, remember, Allie, in your course, you guys are all saying you wanted to make a difference and you wanted to work with students and you really loved that piece of it. So that's helpful for me to understand your motivation. And if you remember, and this is what I do with every course, what I expect to get out of it was to have fun. I want to have fun. In my drum studio, when I taught that wide range of people, private lessons, one-on-one music, I was teaching a lot of kids, and I was like, oh, I need some rules here. I have like rules on the board, whatever. So I had 3 rules, and I thought I would make it fun. So I said, okay, I got 3 rules to how to play drums. I posted it on my wall. It was rule number one, be lazy. Rule number 2, make mistakes. Rule number 3, have fun. And I actually did translate it into something that was meaningful. For example, like be lazy. Well, if I'm training people to be teachers, be lazy. Yeah, shut up and let them do it. Or if I'm teaching somebody how to play drums, be lazy. If they're struggling, no, be lazy. Use your wrist. Like, don't try so hard, because if we're struggling, struggle does not equal accomplishment, So be lazy. The second one, make mistakes. Okay. Effortful learning. We will make mistakes along the way. And if people, and they actually know that mistake-free learning is mistaking performance for learning. You're just seeing a perfect performance. That doesn't mean that learning happened. We actually learn better when we actually do have to struggle through something and we make it stick. That's why we say, hey, you learn from your mistakes. Of course, in skydiving, you'd rather learn from other people's mistakes because it hurts less. But and then the third one, have fun. Yeah, because that's the motivating part. If we're not having fun, why are we doing it? And it's not to say that every single moment of every endeavor or every piece of learning that you're going to do is having fun, but it will, I think, more accurately predict your stick-to-itiveness. I mean, are you going to keep engaging in this? Are you going to make a difference? Is it going to be integrated for you? Are you going to transfer it to the next thing? And are you even going to make analogies from this situation to this next situation so that you can kind of like replicate that success in a different arena? I mean, this is wonderful. We already know that. Have you guys seen that thing? It was it was from Volkswagen, the Fun Theory, funtheory.com. I don't know if it's still around. Have you seen that?
I remember that.
You remember that? Oh, it's so cool. Okay,
might be generational, but I remember that. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So they took these things and were trying to see like if they could make people's behavior change if they made it fun. And so they had a set of stairs and they had an escalator, and everybody, of course, took the escalator. So overnight they made the stairs into a piano.
Yeah.
And so you would step on the piano, you step on the stairs and you'd make
Yeah.
the song. And then they watched as people completely switched. Everybody wanted to go up the stairs now.
Hmm.
And that wasn't done because, like, oh, well, you have to do it to save the environment. Oh, it saves electricity. Oh, it blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we all want to change. It's hard to change, even when you want to change, but we do for fun
Hmm.
Mm.
because change is hard.
Yeah.
I got an example of that. Okay, you ready? You guys gonna do
Yeah.
something with me?
Yes.
Okay. Go like this, and then put
right.
your fingers where they feel natural. All right, now change it up. Go the other way, like that, with the other hand on top. That feels weird, doesn't it? It's awkward. It's like weird. I can't even do. Okay, now cross your arms.
Oh yeah, the other way.
Okay, now try the other way.
Right.
I can't even.
Oh yeah,
I don't even know
that's
how to
insane.
do it.
So
That's
awkward.
crazy.
Change is so freaking hard.
Right.
You know, you know what? In a classroom, you could go, okay, we're gonna change seats. I
Mhm.
mean, have you ever done that? Like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, what an uproar!
Yeah, right.
I mean, we make such an uproar about moving 12 inches to the right or left. Like, can
Yeah.
you imagine? Like, real change is so hard. Even
Yeah.
we want to change, it's hard.
Yeah.
So, how do we do it? Make it fun. I mean, I took a long way around, but hopefully you can hear it. I mean,
No,
this
that-
is my fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
Well, as you were talking about like the rotation of fun, time, and good, right? What's brilliant about this is I really like the simplicity of it. Because I was going to ask you, so how does somebody get motivated to do something, like to jump into the fun part? I'm thinking of an educator, right? We get burnt out and we're like, and everybody's like, well, go back to why you started teaching, blah, 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 and all that. But what I also heard you say here is I like the be lazy part. And to me, that's like, yes, let's stop like telling teachers you got to go, 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 go. You know what? Give the kids something, be lazy, find out where they are, meet them where they are, and then take it to the next step, move the needle a little bit one day, and then forget about it. It's all right. We can go into the next day and continue.
Right. Be a
yeah.
plate spinner, not a juggler.
Yeah, right. And that's I think the essence, Allie, of this entire series is, and which is brilliant about having you at this point in the series is, how do you do it? There you go. You be lazy, you make mistakes, and you have fun. Like, what happened to that in the classroom, Allie? Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, that's, I mean, and not any classroom. When I say classroom, life is a classroom, but
Yeah.
cool. I think it's brilliant, Jen, and that's going to help our listeners so much. And
Right.
if
I am a drummer.
I
am a drummer and I'm a skydiver. I mean, I can't be that smart.
Have you?
So I got to keep it simple.
I kind of want to see one of those videos where you're drumming while you're skydiving. Has that happened before?
No, I mean,
Not yet.
I've often thought I would love to jump into like a drum and bugle corps, event.
Yeah.
Like, like
Oh,
you're pretty near Phantom Regiment, right? And Cavaliers and all that. That's in your neck of the woods, right, Peter? I think.
Say again, who was it?
Phantom Regiment and Cavaliers. They're in Illinois.
Oh yeah,
And,
right. Yeah.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Madison, Wisconsin. They have the Scouts.
Yeah.
There's like a lot
Right.
of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to jump into do a demo into a drum corps with a snare drum or something like that. And
I'm trying to get
That'd be
Allie to
awesome.
do a podcast while she's, skydiving, and I don't
I'm
know how
trying to
it works.
explain the audio wouldn't work.
I think if
Yeah.
you had a helmet on with a mic underneath, I think, just saying. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe on the plane right up.
Well, you know how crew they have those helmets.
Right.
I
They
know.
look really good.
It's
Crew
true.
does.
I could do a
Allie.
high pull.
Yeah.
It's interesting because so like you're doing like the three opposite that I think the messaging has somewhere gotten muddled in education. So you're saying be lazy. I feel like, make mistakes, have fun. And I feel like education right now is work as hard as you can,
Mm-hmm.
do it perfectly, and don't have any fun.
Yeah.
Like,
don't
it's
smile
not
until
like-
Christmas, right? Like it's
Right. Like, in some way, whether it's messaging from the world, a district leader, a principal, or it's just internally, like, you feel this sense of needing to do things perfectly. And in order to do things perfectly, you have to control everything. And then, like,
Yeah.
the students are the ones not learning and you have more behavior stuff. And it's not saying that this happens every day, but like if you're an educator feeling that angst, I think this message is really powerful to relax, go back into that nice arch, like, get back to
Focus
your
on the
center.
important. Yeah.
And, a core of this series that we found out is that disrupting education, in people who are deeply invested in education, such as yourself, have these seemingly small things that make really big differences.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I mean, I say this all the time on the podcast, with skydiving, it's like, it will change your life. Like it may be 30 seconds of you free falling that could change the total trajectory of your life if you overcome the fear to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really wanted to have you on to kind of break down like some barriers of fear that maybe skydiving really isn't for you. That's okay. But like you're holding on to some kind of fear that's preventing you from moving forward, whatever that is. And like, how can we overcome that? And you've given us and our listeners some really great thoughts around that.
Yeah.
I'm really curious, and part of the series is also kind of understanding people's purpose for like why they do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, is there any like story or moment that's kind of like pushed your trajectory into the work that you do and like the purpose behind like why you're so passionate about skydiving and teaching and educating those like in the sport and other areas?
Well, and so that people don't take the wrong idea. When you say be lazy, what you really mean is the efficiency part of like, don't be lazy as in not invested, but
Right.
do the things that matter, and let it go. And the whole make mistakes piece. We have to have, just as we want our students to have room to make mistakes, you have to allow yourself to make those mistakes as well, because that's where you find those pieces. And we're so attuned to problem solving, but problem solving doesn't work. I mean, most of the time, problems are self-correcting. If you just let it lie, I mean, like, what is it, like a bird? Like, what did they say? Like, a problem is like a bird, you let it go, and if it comes back to you, it was yours. Okay, now you can solve the problem. But
That and love.
like problem solving in skydiving is horrible, actually, right, Allie? Like, you can't solve problems. You have to act. You just you just move forward. If you sit there and solve the problem, you're wasting time and altitude, and you need to just go to what works. Okay, here's an example in skydiving. It's called object fixation. So basically, let's say you have a student, and this happens a lot, sorry, but it does, because this is human nature. Yeah, let's say you have a student, they're going to land off the drop zone, because it's windy or something. And so they have this huge field with one tree in it. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to steer and hit that tree. So we have this concept that we actually teach people to stop problem solving. It's look away, steer away, decide high, look to what's good. It's not to say don't notice that tree right there, but look at all the stuff that is happening that is good, that is working. Like, if we put more of our energy and efforts towards that, the problems will kind of correct themselves. That doesn't become a problem anymore because you're focused on something else. You focus on the problem, you're going to keep looking at it, and you go where your eyes go, and you're going to almost be a self-fulfilling prophecy with that. But as to you asked me like why, the purpose, and in a general sense, I feel like the purpose of education is always changing, and we have to, of course, the purpose of education in the 1500s was way different than it is now. Like, why wouldn't we expect that this is always changing? Why do we act like this is a bad thing? Like, oh, we need to respond to the changes. Well, duh. Like, it's going to, because we're evolving and we're kind of responding. And you're like, and in fact, like, this is a very slow moving ship, because, man, educators at the level of grade school and middle school and high school have to like think so far ahead. And they're like, the things that they do are for the next generation ahead. So it is going to be change. It's always going to be that. And the purpose should mirror what society needs, obviously, because they're going to be adults. You're going to be an adult a lot longer than you were a kid. But the concept that, that somehow we're doing it wrong, well, you're way behind on it already. By the time, like, we can't look at that and say, oh, well, somehow, let's say the education is the whole reason for all these problems we're having right now. That's kind of unfair. You know, that's really unfair because it's a very slow moving ship and you can't predict it. And it's of course changing. It's like we should be expecting that we're always evolving and staying things. We should never go, oh, we finally got figured it out. Yay, we're done. No, that doesn't ever happen. It's like laundry. You're always going to have the net, you always have laundry. So, the purpose of it, the purpose of education in general should just like, if we do take that idea about it, it's like, you're not done and you don't have it figured out. You're never going to have it. Isn't that the fun part? Like that is the fun part, is not the not knowing and the pursuing and the not. So we are doing it as to ourselves as well as our students are doing it. That's kind of the purpose overall, I think. As to me, my purpose for education, well, it really got honed when I was a drop zone owner because first of all, I want to get people in the air because that's money. That's my business. That's how we earn money. Like, I don't want to be inefficient. We got to get loads. We got to get jumps off. But at the same time, I want them to be safe. So we can't hurry. We can't hurry through it. So it has to be good. So it has to be efficient and good. And so I honed a lot of my ideas based on that. Like, how can we take the best time? And plus customer service. How do I, like there's something to be said about, I feel like my students are my customers. I got to make them happy. I got to meet their expectations. There's a really accountability there. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to get kind of lost that they're, it's just the students and they have to show up and they have to sit in the seat and all that. But we do have a responsibility for them. It's probably not the same. I mean, do we have the responsibility for all the problems that people like claim is education's fault or that? No, we don't have that. Like, I had some struggles as a female tandem instructor during an era when there weren't a lot of female tandem instructors. And I felt like I had to keep proving myself all over again, over and over and over again. And I was lamenting this to a friend of mine, who was another tandem examiner. And I'm like, how many times do I have to prove myself? And he goes, every time. And I'm going, oh, right, I do. But I don't prove myself to those naysayers. I prove myself to every single person I teach. Every single person that I take with me on a skydive, that's who I'm proving myself to. And I think that focus can, it can get you really sidetracked when they aren't the loudest voices sometimes, and so I feel like that's a purpose as well, is like just, and it renews me, when I started this out saying I'm a parasite on people's excitement. Well, it's like, it's true though. It's so true when it can renew you, when it allows you to, and when you can help like not have that distraction. I mean, like obviously I had 3 years in public schools and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't handle this. So I don't even know how people do it these days, but I'm like advising people of something I wasn't able to do. I took an easier way, an easier road, but I feel like, maybe the things that we think are problems aren't really the problems, and maybe focus on the things that are good. Look at the things that you can affect. Mm-hmm. You can see that kind of thing. And I really just I just love learning myself. I just love learning myself. Like, I mean, the people who have taught me the most, and I mean, I've gone through a lot of school, have been my students, not my teachers. Because if you're open to it, they teach you a lot if you're open to it. My son, wow, he taught me a lot about being a parent, like, wow, he was great. He's kind of a little pill, but wow, he's wonderful now. He's 22 now, so he's good. Not so much when he was 8 or whatever, but yeah, I mean, but how much he taught me about myself or about life, about being consistent, but that's because you do have to be open to it. And that causes you to, you have to not have that ego. I see that in skydiving. I don't know if it's in the education world, probably not so much, because a lot of people, okay. Well, for example, people identify with their knowledge base, which is kind of ridiculous because you need to update your operating system every once in a while. Really, can you just separate your identity from your knowledge base and let's just throw all our knowledge out here on the table and we could pick it up and look at it and borrow it and copy it and use it. But I am not my knowledge. I would, be embarrassed to think that, the things that I thought were awesome 20 years ago, that I'm still doing that. No, I mean, you're always constantly changing, but as long as you realize that that's a thing, and I'm going to keep updating my operating system, so to speak, because that's outside of myself. It exists outside of myself.
Yeah.
My knowledge exists outside of myself. I am just here to administer it and play with it and pass it along and add to it where I can. If I can add some insight and stuff, just like throw my stuff on the table for everybody to play with. I think that helps a lot too, because then your purpose doesn't become so like don't take yourself so seriously, man. You know, like, wow. I mean, Allie probably, I don't know. Allie, you have a really great club where you're jumping is such a great community and culture. But I travel a lot and I see a lot of drop zones, and some of them are amazing. And some of them are like, wow, very, very tight, very, come on.
Same with schools.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's human nature a little bit, but maybe if we can just let go of that,
Right.
It's like new knowledge is like this. It's like, okay, take a breath in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now hold that breath. Don't let it go because it was a really, really good breath. You really needed it. You know what? It's going to go stale. You better let it go. Let it go. Let go what you thought was so wonderful and breathe in a new one or you're going to die. Like,
There you go.
If we can remember that would be amazing.
That's Allie, that sums it up. I mean, thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks for
Fun
listening
time,
to me.
good. Yeah. I mean, there's so much. I mean, I have like a page and a half of notes. You should teach a class on this, honestly. It's
Thank
wonderful. How can people connect with you and or all the drop zones in the different places? How can they find out more?
Okay, well, if you want to find a drop zone in your area, you go to uspa.org. That's the association I work for, and it's basically the National Skydiving Association is the one who does the credentialing, how Allie earned her tandem instructor rating.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a page on there. It's a drop zone locator where you can look up a drop zone in your area. You can like filter it and kind of look and see, well, whatever you want to look by, just kind of filter it. And you can find all the contact information, a link to their website and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And those are group members. There are other drop zones, but the group members, they have, the USPA standard on it. So I think, there's obviously other drop zones. Just check it out,
Mm-hmm.
go out and look at it. Look at, just go be a lurker for a while and see what you think. Yeah.
Right.
Go fun.
How can people connect with you, Jen, if they want, to learn more about you and all the stuff that you're doing, as you do a lot?
Yeah. Well, I do have a website, jensharp.com, my name, jensharp.com. I don't really update it very much because I'm kind of busy. I'm also on LinkedIn. But if people email me and, have something cool project or something, I love having, cross, just like I don't even know the word.
Cross-pollination.
Cross-pollination. There you go.
Right.
That's exactly what cross-pollination is amazing. I mean, it's great to refresh I love not knowing about something and somebody else does. And then you connect with them. All of a sudden you have access to a whole bunch of things right there just because you know somebody. Like, do you need to know everything? No, I just know a lot of people and that's fun. So
like
I don't know. I know a
skydiving
person.
and podcasting at the same time, Allie.
Yeah.
He's determined. I'll have to figure it out. So
Yeah.
usually we get my final thoughts, but Peter, it's your turn. How do we wrap up this conversation? What are your takeaways and final thoughts?
Yeah, this is going to take another episode after this, but I really connect with the simplicity of what you're saying here, Jen, is just being lazy and understanding what lazy means, making mistakes and having fun. I think there's so much in those three pieces that educators in the K through 12 system and beyond can really start to get traction and make a change, whether it's big or small or whatever, just to kind of re-establish their goals and in the change. Kind of in I think the other thing is like the renewing, right? Allie and I always kind of, at the end of a day, we're at the end of a day when we do a lot of these recordings. I worked a full day at a school and you're supposed to be tired. But just like you said, Jen, you are renewed having these conversations and being a part of just being curious and learning. So not only do I learn, or Allie and I learn from our students, we always learn from our guests, and I learned a lot from you.
Great. I've had such fun because that's the point,
Thank
right?
you so much, Jen, for coming on and sharing, we had to do a podcast with one of my mentors in the skydiving world and showcase that, disrupting education happens in all fields. And I think our listeners are going to really, really love this episode. So if you know someone who's thinking about skydiving and is in education, share this out. For sure, share this out. Connect with Jen. For Peter Hostrasser, I'm Allie Privet. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Disrupt Education podcast, and we will catch you next week and beyond. Till next time.
Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Allie Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.